on. There's a number of other coaches that are potentially on the hot seat. I mean, Sam Pittman of Arkansas, Gus Malzahn of UCF. Alex, what are some of the names you've been hearing, and is it warranted?
I've been hearing Neil Brown of West Virginia as a big one. Go to the group of five. Been hearing a lot, just looking it up today, on Trent Dilfer at UAB, possibly being out the door. And that was an interesting one to begin with, because he was never a collegiate head coach and was a high school head coach. And if you remember, there was a thing the year before he got hired of him basically tossing one of his kids on the sideline and grabbing him by the jersey and kind of like just chucking him to the bench, which was not a good look. And then you go ahead and hire him. It hasn't really been working out there. You've got a couple obvious ones like Ryan Walters at Purdue. It's only year two, but they've been struggling. They already fired the OC. Kenny Burns at Kent State. They went winless. Kind of the writing on the wall there. And then I know that there's going to be one that gets brought up if somehow they lose tomorrow. I don't think it should happen, but Ryan Day.
Wow.
If they lose tomorrow, they're coming for his head.
Yeah, they should.
I disagree. I know the standard is beat Michigan, go play for national championships, but at the same time, he's a top 5 head coach.
Yes.
When you look at the entire aspect of what a head coach is, I hate saying nice things about them, especially a day before the game. But if they got rid of him, that is a massive mistake on their part. Unless Urban Meyer decides he wants to come back and coach.
Well,
go ahead, Sean.
I was going to just bring it to you, and I was going to say, when you're one of these schools and you have one job, and you have 2 jobs, win it all and Big Ten and all that good stuff, but you got one main job. And it's the same reason they take all the O's out of everything in Michigan. Michigan and Ohio State takes all the M's out. You got to beat the rival. You got to beat these guys. You know firsthand, Alex, Harbaugh was all but gone when he couldn't beat Michigan State and he couldn't beat Ohio State.
He was just about out the door, and he renegotiated to take less money, and then they go on that 3-year stretch.
Yeah. So you got to win those games. And I know there are people. I know Chris is in the comments saying, "Look, what? You only lose one game a year. What? No, how could you be out?" But it's just different in those areas. The general public might feel like, "No, this is one of the great coaches." And you've talked to me about it many times, Alex. Who are you going to replace him with? He is one of the best coaches in the country. But in their minds, sometimes it's very small on certain things. It's like, you don't beat that team, bye-bye. That's how it is. Yeah. Will, what were you about to say?
Yeah, no, I think this would be the year that it would be justified to fire Ryan Day, because who is Michigan's quarterback?
Davis Warren.
If you can't beat Michigan with this Michigan team with that guy at quarterback, who was a walk-on and is showing like he was a walk-on who's developed, but his ceiling was always down here.
Yeah,
where like that would make sense for me to the administration to finally say, you can't win the game, you have to win. We need to find someone else who can, because we are enough of an institution where we can get in the players that are going to keep us within the top 10, pretty consistently. But I'm with you where Ryan Day is a very good coach. And I've made that argument before where it's like, well, he's getting you there. He's getting you to the top 5 every single year, but this would be this would make sense, for me. But, it'd kind of be like, well, who are you going to find to replace him? It's kind of like, I thought Alabama did a really good job of grabbing the guy from Washington, but it's hard to replace someone at a Day level, at a Saban level. That's impossible to replace.
Yeah.
But, you kind of look around and say, well, who else could you bring in that might be able to get you over that hump like that? Some of the other names you mentioned, West Virginia, going to school in West Virginia at Shepherd. A lot of Mountaineer fans, though, just kind of looking at Neil Brown. I mean, he's been on the hot seat for a couple of years.
Right.
But you're looking at who he's beaten, and he hasn't beaten anybody. And when they go play someone difficult this year, they've lost every single difficult game they've had against Penn State, Ohio, Iowa State, Kansas State. They're all losing them, and they're not even close in some of these. So it is probably a time for them to reset. And same thing with Arkansas. Sam Pittman was fired. I think he was fired before week 1. Basically, he kind of knew that he was going to be out. I think at one point they had an idea who they wanted to replace him with. I can't remember who it is, but what was he? The offensive line coach at Georgia. It's kind of the whole hire itself. Once he lost KJ Jefferson, all that goodness just kind of left that program.
Now, to be fair, I think they've looked better than expected this year. I don't think many people expected them to go beat some of the teams they've beaten, but at the same time, I agree. I think he was a dead man walking coming into the year.
Yeah. Well, and I just forgot this, and I didn't want to talk too long, but Sean, to your Tar Heels. Losing to Madison, James Madison, we are the Dukes of JMU. That is inexcusable. That is. But I think there has to be an understanding of all the talent that went to the NFL. North Carolina is not the program to quickly replace them. And I know we're going to talk about another head coach who's on the hot seat, and it's the same situation they're going through right now. When you lose a De'Ami Brown, and you lose a Josh Downs, and you lose a Drake May, and who's the guy? Sam Howell, and De'Ami Brown. These are NFL talents that you don't just have the next guy ready to take over. North Carolina and Mac Brown did a wonderful job of going from Sam Howell to Drake May. That's incredible. And they got so lucky that 2 guys out of Charlotte were elite quarterbacks that wanted to go there. But that's where sort of sometimes I'm like, the expectations need to be realistic. And it isn't going to be a certain program like that is not going to be able to lose that elite talent and just stay on top. There's going to be drops for him to rebuild. So that's where I was kind of like, I get it, but it's like you got to also know what you're going, the peaks and valleys of your program.
Right. And when you start winning and when you start bringing in this talent, then the expectations rise because to your point, we are an 8-win team. We are that kind of, we've been known as a basketball school, except for these last couple of years. And you talk about the quarterbacks, you talk about the wide receivers. Let's look at the running backs. Javonte Williams, Michael Carter, both those guys got drafted. Even Ty Chandler, who transferred in for 1 year, got drafted and is playing some meaningful minutes. And then now you
get drafted pretty high.
Right. Amarion Hampton's going to get a lot of love. So we see the influx of talent. I think we have a top 10 DN and Ruckus or Runyon. Name escapes me right now. Rucker, yeah. The fact that we are bringing in this talent is great. My little thing, and this is where, there might be a little inside stuff going on. We got to remember, Mac Brown started with North Carolina, abruptly left to Texas, wins the national championship, and then comes back. And it's kind of like, oh, okay, now you're back. Now we're going to handle this our way because it's like, dude, we're 6-5. If we were 3 and whatever, or we're at bowl eligible. I was like, wait a minute. I was like, wait, you can't just let this man play to the end. He's going to go to a daggone bowl game, man. What are y'all? Yeah. But that's besides the point. I'm here in North Carolina, so I need to speak softly because I want to make it back to Virginia. But yeah, no, and it's funny. I shared something on my Facebook. My parents are talking about it, that, it's all over the news here that they let him go and then they fired him, all that stuff. But Will, I'm going to come back to you. We see some of the guys that have left. I'm going to throw a couple names out there that maybe have earned themselves another year, but I don't know if that makes their seat any less hot. And you're in SEC, Billy Napier. I know he got the extension, but he's making things look better, but there's still some question. Lincoln Riley out in USC. I mean, he's not been able to emulate the talent that he's had over the years. And then we talk about Oklahoma, Brent Venables. They have not been able to truly, outside of the Alabama game, they have not looked great in the SEC. Are these more big name coaches? Are these guys, still on a warm seat in their respective locations?
Oh, yeah. I think they're going into next year saying, I have to figure this out. Napier has, he's kind of been saved by Lagway coming in and maybe even some of the guys that weren't buying in, if he's sort of replaced them a little bit, was that dude who after one of their losses, like, man, forget this stuff.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
Yep.
and I think, you know, that Napier basically say, I'm going to focus on the guys that want to be here. And he is improving, you know, but regardless, the resources at Florida should make you must be better than what he's been doing. Same thing with Lincoln Riley. They're paying him a boatload of money to win games. And besides bringing your quarterback from Oklahoma, what have you produced at Southern Cal, you know, since then? And Venables, yeah, you know, I thought it was a great hire. He deserved to be a head coach. It was the reason him and Tony Elliott were the big time reasons why Clemson was so good. He even more so than I think Tony Elliott a little bit, how good he was with that defense. And it's been kind of surprising how difficult it's been. So I think, yeah, all three of those guys are going into next season knowing I got to get it right. I have to get it right this year. Kind of like the Sam Pittmans of the world.
Right. And look, Alex, before you say this, I was going to bring the same question to you. And the guy that we've talked about a lot, James Franklin at Penn State. Same boat. Can't get over the hump.
That's another one where it's just like, is there somebody that can do a better job there? Like, where you look great against everyone not named Michigan and Ohio State year after year. Yeah. And even this year, they've struggled some of those games. Minnesota almost beat them last week, for that matter. USC almost beat them. And those are teams that not many people are considering any good. Now, Minnesota also should have beat us. So that's another one there. But
should have beat us too. So.
Yeah. That's 3 more wins they should have had, maybe. But, I think it's time for James Franklin to be on the hot seat. And another one in the SEC that I think saved his job for this year, but goes right back on the hot seat next year is Hugh Freeze at Auburn. I think he was out the door had they lost last week and this next game, but I think he's bought himself another year.
Auburn would be lucky to get rid of Hugh Freeze in my. That's why I was laughing at it. Just like, that's your head coach. Have fun with that, Auburn.
You're right.
Yeah.
Yo, Chris is saying James Franklin ain't going nowhere. Stop that mess. He ties the school by far beyond wins and losses in 2 games. He also said Lincoln Riley to Ohio State.
Does he have the defense enough though to go to the Big Ten? Does Lincoln Riley have that?
I mean, we saw it this year. No, he doesn't.
No, that's what I'm saying. Like, consistently, he's a Big 12 type coach.
But if he was able to keep, say, Jim Knowles on the coaching staff, get a really, really good defensive coordinator, I think you can make that work. That would be an interesting one. Lincoln Riley,
that's the big name that you would fire a Ryan Day for, would be someone like Lincoln Riley. I think.
Or would they build in house? Would they go off one of the guys they currently have, kind of like what we did? A guy that I think they could potentially go to that's been getting some looks elsewhere at some smaller schools, obviously, but Brian Hartline, the wide receivers coach.
Oh yeah,
he's great recruiter, as you can see with the wide receivers they've gotten through Columbus there, but that's a guy that I think if you were going to get rid of Ryan Day, I think that's that sneaky in-house hire.
Interesting. Well, and to Chris's point, but this is the problem for Penn State. James Franklin can get you to 9 wins every single year, and that's something. Right. He can get you to a top 10 program, but like what Alex was saying, every time Penn State has to play Michigan, you can white out all you want. When they have to go play Ohio State, and now Big Ten only got more difficult, he doesn't win it, you know? And so, but again, that's kind of where I go to the whole, well, what is your program's actual ceiling? You know, is getting to 9 and 10 wins and being a top 10 program, that's the best I can remember Penn State since the early 90s, you know?
They made the playoff in one of the years with Barkley, if I'm not mistaken. 2016 or 17.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they made the playoffs once, if I'm not mistaken.
Interesting.
I think they got boat race. I think it was the same one that like Washington was in with Jake Browning, and it was an early playoff.
Yeah.
But at the same time, he's recruiting in that upper tier better than almost any coach year after year after year. So you're getting the top guys in, and you can't get over the hump versus a Michigan that up until this year never really got 5 stars. And we just develop, and turn these guys into great players. So I think there's something to be said for James Franklin going on the hot seat. Should he be fired? Probably not.
Right.
But I think there's got to be some pressure on him.
Absolutely. Now, there's one other name I want to add, just as there's been talk about it, and I know you've been hearing it, Alex. Your coach, Jerome Moore. I know this is his first year. He's got to get his recruits. He's got to get all that. But when you come from a national championship to kind of what we've seen this year, people get used to winning, and then they start talking crazy, man. Have you heard any of that conversation, or is that even a possibility?
I've heard it. No, it's not a possibility. We lost 18 starters. You get 22 starters on offense and defense. 18 of those walked out the door. I think 17 of them are playing in the NFL. 1 retired after getting drafted as well. But and then you lost your head coach, your defensive coordinator, your strength and conditioning coach, your linebackers coach, your DBs coach. Like, you lost half a dozen coaches as well as your 18 out of 22 starters. Yeah. Seeing what was on the roster, even I had high expectations for this year. We shouldn't have. It was foolish to have those high of expectations, but you just went and got the number 1 recruit in the country, and you're flipping guys at an unreal rate right now. You're going to have potentially a top 5 recruiting class. Give him the time with those new recruits. The one coach I would say, though, if you're going to put somebody on the hot seat at Michigan, it's Wink Martindale, the defensive coordinator.
Sure.
You had potentially 3 top 15 picks on that defense, and a ton of guys on that defense that played quality reps for that national championship team last year. And then a guy, Jayshawn Barham, who played plenty at Maryland. There was no excuse for the defense to be that bad. It's the same scheme. Didn't make adjustments until the last 3 games. They've allowed maybe 600-700 yards of total offense. So the defense has gotten much better, and the points have been way down. It might not even be 600 yards of total offense allowed. So if you're going to look at somebody at Michigan, it would be there. But Kirk Campbell, the OC, and Sherrone Moore by getting Underwood. And Sherrone Moore has done an incredible job recruiting offensive line. We're about to have 2 top 10 offensive tackles and a couple 4- and 5-star interior offensive linemen. They've bought themselves another year, if not more.
Should be more. Yeah, should be a few. Give them a chance.
The only reason I say at least 1 year is if you bring all that in and then you crap the bed, then I think they're probably sending you out the door.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. And as NCAA 25 has taught me anything, is recruiting is not easy. All right. Nope. So if it's not easy in a video game, it's not easy in real life.
College football update with your host, Sean Spencer and Alex Russo.